Hello everyone, my name is Antony Cummins and I'm a historical researcher and author. Now one of the publishing companies I work alongside is Tuttle. Now Tuttle have asked me to do some video reviews of some of their books so you can get a better understanding of what books are out there on Japan and Japanese culture. So today we're going to review this book. This is When Buddhists Attack by Jeffrey K. Mann. Now it comes in the standard Tuttle format. That means it's quite a small hardback. It is got a lovely dust jacket, which is quite nice. And when you reel it back, you get the same picture on the dust jacket. You do in this edition anyway. It is roughly 215 pages long, and the concept is, if you ever wanted to know or understand the true role of Zen Buddhism in the martial arts, then look no further. And they are the words by Patrick McCarthy, the quite famous karateka gentleman. So this is the curious relationship between Zen and the martial arts. Okay, we all know about the samurai and Zen. The samurai who have mastered Zen and human control, and they go into battle with a calm heart. Or so we all think. Now, Mr. Mann's book is about the relationship between Zen and the samurai, but it's also, and quite heavily, the relationship between Zen and martial arts. So we have to be careful here. A lot of Japanese martial arts come from after samurai times. So he does talk quite a lot about Zen in martial arts, which actually post-date the samurai. So I would say his book is a little bit of a mix. It deals with samurai times, it deals with World War II and, post-samurai times, and it also deals with modern martial arts. And of course, his personal journey through Zen and how Zen affects the martial arts themselves. So did you know that he says the first time Zen is introduced to the samurai is actually in the 13th century. Now he's saying, so that's about 300 years after the samurai have been established, and he's saying that there's a hierarchy of Buddhism and Zen inside samurai warfare and inside samurai culture, and this is the hierarchy. So Tendai is for the imperial court, Shingon Buddhism is for the nobility, Zen is for the warrior class, and Pure Land is for the masses. Now those are the divisions he gives. He's saying that actually the type of Buddhism you would follow could depend on your social class. So a samurai, according to this, would study Zen. Now he's saying that because the samurai didn't understand Chinese writing, which is quite true. A lot of the samurai, while literate, it was difficult to understand another culture's writing. While the characters are the same, the actual language is different, so they couldn't fully get the meanings from it. So he says they developed the Zen koan, the one word or the short phrase that is meant to spark enlightenment or true seeing. So what you have here is that the samurai develop their own type of Zen. They develop a way to integrate Chinese Zen into their Japanese military ways. So his connection to the martial arts is that first of all you have an unconditioned response. This can be emotionally or physically in martial arts, that you just respond to something. Second is that you have a conditioned response. Stimuli comes in and you respond in a specific way that you've been trained to respond in. You've trained your body or your mind to respond to the threat or the action. And the third one is an aware response. It's a response with awareness. You know what's happening, you know how to respond, you know how to get involved. This means you have full control of the situation. Something that he does point out in the book, which is actually really quite interesting, he says that in the modern samurai community, we use the words bujitsu and budo. Now he says we tend to use the word bujitsu to mean specific and very practical skills or warrior skills, but budo to show the more enlightened way of, the way we perform martial arts or taking a more spiritual approach. And he says that most people think there's a dividing line where in the warring periods they dealt only with practicality, and in the peace periods they dealt with the spiritual way. And he says that's not quite true. It was more of a bleed over, and that there's definitely examples of Budo in warring periods, and there's definitely examples of Bujutsu in the Edo period. Now I liked this because I didn't quite think of it like that. I thought, yeah, when I read that I thought that's a very good point. And he's saying that sometimes spiritual refinement was processed in the warring period, but also some people needed to have really practical skills, because as we've discussed before, it's quite obvious that Japanese skills have lost their practicality, but of course they were based in practicality. So he goes into a nice discussion about how the two have bled over and how we misunderstand the pair of them, which I thought was quite interesting. He also says that, and I agree with him, that it moved from a realistic fighting style to an unrealistic one, which became more ostentatious or display. And I won't spoil it here, but he goes into the argument in the book, and I quite agree with him in quite a lot of points. Now, before I give you some examples from the book, let me tell you that I never like to do a review without pointing out the negative elements. And sometimes they're not always negative, it's just that sometimes you can't just say a book's great. Now, when I got this book, I thought this was going to be purely about samurai. I thought this is going to be a history book about the samurai, or even about the warrior monks back in the Sengoku period. But it wasn't. Unfortunately, it had a little bit on the samurai, but lots of it was to do with self-development or a journey through the martial arts of today and his journey. So it's almost a little bit out of date in the fact that it's a journey about him going to Japan. Now, so many thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people have done that journey now, where in the 1960s you could get away with that. So I would say, if anything, I don't think it concentrates enough on the samurai. But I think it has got a solid amount there, and I would definitely recommend you get the book. But be aware that when you get it, there's elements of self-journey, of martial arts in a modern concept to do with Zen. I personally am only really interested in the warring periods of Japan and how the real fighters, real samurai, dealt with it and how the Zen affected them. Now, of course, he does go into this, but not enough. But that's my only real problem with the book, is that it's too much of a mix and match. But then again, he's tried to pull, the one thread that pulls it all together is Zen. So if you want to learn some of the Japanese terms, you can do. For example, there's Kongo-za, which is the full lotus. There's Kishu-za, which is the right foot up. There's Goma-za, where the left foot is up. And there's different terms for the different positions in Zen and when you're practicing Zen. So if you really are interested in Zen, you can get your terminology down and you can start to understand the Japanese words that were used around the ritual. To give you a brief outline of what's in it, the contents of this: the foreword, the introduction, the life and teachings of the Buddha, Zen in Buddhist context, the warrior's Zen, initial attraction, part 2, the established relationship, chapter 5 is meditation, how to meditate, chapter 6 is Mushin and mindfulness, chapter 7 is Zen, Budo and ethics, chapter 8 is the contemporary world of Budo. The epilogue is it really Zen? And that's how the contents lay out over the 200 pages. So, for example, he talks about the 4 noble truths of Buddhism. So, to live is to suffer, simply living is suffrage. The cause of suffering is desire. To eradicate suffering, one must eradicate desire. And you must follow the Eightfold Path. Now, the Eightfold Path, this is what the Eightfold Path is. It's correct view, correct thought or intention, correct speech, correct action, correct livelihood or living, correct effort, correct mindfulness or meditation, and correct concentration. When you follow those, you, as a warrior or as a martial artist, as a person, will have a stable, correct inside. So the first 2 chapters are basically about Zen itself and how it fits in with the warriors. So let me read you something. Let me give you an example of the text. So he says in chapter 3, interestingly, while Buddhism helped the samurai achieve a proper state of mind regarding death, It was the samurai's constant and necessary acknowledgement of his own mortality which made it easier to undertake and understand Zen. According to Suzuki, he says, I quote, "Now the life of a samurai is especially one in which birth-death cannot be comprehended, and when one does understand birth-death, inevitably the way of Buddha is there." End of quote. The author then continues with, "Overcoming achievement to this life was perceived as an absolute necessity for the samurai. The discipline of Zen assisted in this pursuit, and the fact that the samurai were already concerned about such a matter made them greater adepts of Zen." So basically, the birth-death idea is, the cycle and Buddhism and what we are doing here, and how to get out of suffering and the Eightfold Path and all those associations with Buddhism. And what he's saying is the samurai who were facing death actually had to really find a way and understand how to get around that. And the samurai found Zen really interesting for that reason, that they were facing death all the time. So now from the next chapter we've got, let me give you an example. Returning to Japanese history, one cannot be very surprised to find that the practice of martial arts throughout the Tokugawa era underwent a substantial change. As mentioned above, Budo became a discipline for self-improvement, much more than self-defense. Attention to detail was emphasized more than functional use. It was unavoidable. Therefore, the focus of these arts should narrow. While the samurai in previous generations needed to study the styles of martial arts correctly, these early mixed martial arts slowly disappears as excellence was pursued in a focused art form. Therefore, he's saying basically, they really needed to have the ability to fight, but as time went on, but not such a divide, as time went on, the focus was more on formality and function and form as opposed to actual combat ability, but it was a much slower process than we imagined. Now, there are only a couple of extracts from the book. There are lots more I could give you, but the point is that I think the book is well worth buying. I think you should give it a go. Even if you don't want to follow the man's personal approach to Buddhism, or if you want to ignore that bit, it still gives you a really good idea about Zen and Zen in the samurai arts. So I'd recommend getting a copy. And make sure, of course, you give it a review on Amazon, give it a fair review, and show your support to the author. Now, I'm going to be reviewing more books for Tootle, but please remember is that the information I give you is from these authors, not from me. So if you like Buddhism and if you like martial arts, please pass this video around and let's try and spread and improve our understanding of the Japanese art and of Japanese culture. My name's Antony Cummins. To find out more about Tootle and books, please subscribe to this channel and keep up to date with all the videos.